Hey up everyone, welcome to the Rugby League History channel. I hope you're all well on this Friday and I hope you're all staying safe. Tonight's video is going to be my Brisbane Broncos 2020 season review. Now I'm going to be doing a review of all the teams 1 through to 16. Now I'm going to start from 16 and I'm going to go up to number 1 because obviously the teams up the top are still playing and they're going to be playing deep into October. So I'm going to be starting from the bottom and working my way up. Obviously, as we all know, Brisbane come last. They faced ever wooden spoon, historic wooden spoon, and they can't finish any higher than where they are now. And their season's over. They played their last game on Thursday night, so I'm going to get into the review. Now, before I actually talk about their season, I just want to make a disclaimer saying that, look, growing up, and all the way through, my 20s and in my 30s, I always said Brisbane will never come last. They got too much resources. They've got the whole of Queensland and especially the whole of Brisbane to pick a side from. They got too much power. They're a well-run club. It'll never happen. And I remember growing up in Brisbane, I always used to compare them. I always used to call them, because I'm big on me football. I'm actually probably you could see a bigger football fan than a rugby league fan, and I used to call Brisbane the Manchester United of the NRL because there's a lot of similarities between the two clubs. Both are or were very successful. They both have big supporter bases. They both played a big stadium, and they both had a coach or a manager that was at the club for, you could see, 2 to 3 decades. Manchester United had Sir Alex Ferguson, and Brisbane had Wayne Bennett. And there was a lot of similarities between the two clubs. Growing up, Brisbane won 6 premierships between 1988 and 2006. And I remember, I think it was 2010, they missed the finals for the first time since 1991. And that was declared a disaster. It was all over the media. Brisbane missed the finals. So back in those days, or even 10 years ago, missing the finals was a disaster for Brisbane. For other clubs, it's, oh well, we missed the finals. For Brisbane, it was a disaster. And even if Brisbane finished 7th or 8th and made the finals and went out in the first week, it was still considered a disaster. So to come last or even get close to the bottom, it was unthinkable. So for Brisbane to come last this year, it's just, I still can't believe it. I can't believe that they've come last. But getting into the season review 2020, before the year started, if you watch me NRL 2020 ladder prediction, I predicted Brisbane to come 5th. I thought that they would bounce back after that 58-0 loss against us at Bankwest Stadium. I thought that Anthony Seibold had signed a couple of good players. Brodie Croft from Melbourne was one. And there was a news article before the year started, and it was talking about how Seibold was going to deliver Brisbane their 7th premiership and all this caper. And early on, those first 2 rounds, you could tell that maybe Brisbane were kind of building to something because they beat North Queensland 28 points to 21, round 1, up in Townsville at the new Queensland Country Bank Stadium. Now, if you actually go into it, Brisbane were winning 28 points to, I think it was 6 or 8 with about 15 minutes to go, and then North Queensland scored 2 tries to make the game a bit more respectable. And then the next week, they beat Brisbane, they beat South Sydney up at Suncorp. And there were 2 wins from 2, and then the COVID lockdown happened. Everything shut down. And then there was no rugby league for 3 months, as we all know. And then when the restrictions were lifted and the games started to come back, it was like a totally different team from Brisbane. It was like there were a bunch of imposters out there. And the first game back, I remember it was against us, Parramatta, and I said, this is a real test for Parramatta because Brisbane looked good in those first 2 rounds. And then when we beat them 34 points to 6, I went, this must just be a one-off because we did play quite good that night, but I kind of went, oh, Brisbane will bounce back. They always do. Anyway, next week they lose 59-0. Worst loss in the club's history. They were absolutely diabolical. And it was just embarrassing. And then, they put in a better performance the week after. They lost to Manly 20 points to 18. And then I think that's when it really started to, that's when the confidence started to really drain from Brisbane, because they lost to Newcastle 27 points to 6, Gold Coast 30 points to 12, and then they were beaten by New Zealand in a game where some of the Brisbane players were crying after the game. That was up at the Central Coast. They lost that match 26 points to 16. And then at that stage, that's when the media come out and said that Anthony Seibold's not the coach that's going to take this club forward, and he has to go. And that's when the media started hounding Seibold, telling him to get out. And then after that, they had their last win of the year, which was on the 11th of July 2020. They beat Calgary Bankstown 26 points to 8. And at that stage, I kind of went, I think that they'll avoid the wooden spoon, because I think they're about 6 points ahead of Canterbury. But I think it was 4 points ahead of Canterbury. But then this is when things really went to shite. 48 now, they lost to West Tigers at Leichhardt Oval. 46 points to 8 against Melbourne. And then they had the game won against Cronulla, and then conceded 2 or 3 tries in the last 5 minutes and lost 36 points to 26. And then they lost to South, and then they were in front at half time against Canberra, lost that game 36 points to 8. They had a better performance against St George. They were in that game for most of it, but just couldn't find a way to win. And then they had another embarrassing loss at the Sydney Cricket Ground against Eastern Suburbs, 58 points to 12. And then to round out the year, they lost to Penrith, they lost to the Gold Coast, they lost to, you could see, a pretty ordinary Parramatta side. And then even in the last round, they still had a chance to avoid the wooden spoon, and then they lose to their rivals North Queensland 32 points to 16. Not just on the field, but off the field, it was the worst ever year for Brisbane. There was problems with Anthony Seibold, who ended up stepping down as the coach. You had Tony Staggs with a sex tape. You had Tavita Pangai Jr. You had a couple of other players in the shite with the media. And that's one thing I'll say about the media, and I've noticed it about every club that's been on the bottom. The media will find anything to put the club down. When you're last, the media will dig up stories from years ago. They'll try to follow you when you're out somewhere. They'll try to film you. They'll do anything to try to put shite on you. I remember Parramatta in 2018. All the stories that were coming out when we were coming last, and then the next year, as soon as we're sort of back up there again, magically the reporters just forget about us, and then they start picking on the Gold Coast, who were coming last that year. So it was not just on the field with the performances, but off the field it was bad. There was a few games this year where Brisbane were in front, and then they just, as soon as they got in front, they just capitulated. I don't know what happened, but there was accusations that some players weren't having a go. There was some accusations that players had their minds somewhere else. And then you had David Fafita jumping ship. That was another thing that happened. There wasn't too many positives that come out of the Brisbane year this year. But like I will do with all the other teams, I'm going to pick a player of the year for Brisbane. And I think from what I've seen this year, and from what the players have been putting out, I definitely see Tony Staggs was probably Brisbane's best player this year by a country mile. I think he was the best player week in, week out for Brisbane. Also, you could see that P. Nass, he tried hard in a few games, and they say Patrick Carrigan, he had a red hot goal, but the same can't be said for Darius Boyd, Anthony Milford, Brodie Croft, and a couple of the other players. They went missing a lot this year, and they've also got you could see a young, inexperienced team as well. There's a lot of players that have come from the lower grades, have come from the Queensland Cup. So it's just I think it's a culmination of a couple of years of bad recruitment as well, where Brisbane have got themselves in. But the club needs an entire rebuild from ground up. They just need a total rebuild, and I think it's going to take 1 or 2 years, maybe more, for them to work their way back up the table. I think out of all the performances that they put in this year, because I'm also going to pick a best game of the year. I think the best game that Brisbane played all year was round 1. I think that was their best performance of the year, round 1. And definitely the worst performance of the year would have to be the 59-0 loss to Eastern Suburbs. That's just inexcusable if you're associated to Brisbane in any light. Now, going into my crystal ball for next year, I don't see too much changing for Brisbane. There's a lot of people saying that they might get back-to-back wooden spoons. I don't think that they're going to get back-to-back wooden spoons, but I don't see them making the finals next year. I think that they'll probably finish around 12th or 13th. As I said, they need a complete rebuild, and there's going to be a lot of soul searching in the off-season at Brisbane. And in a way, look, just a closing thought, I'm not particularly happy that Brisbane come last. Being a Parramatta fan, I wanted Canterbury to come last. Once again, those bastards have somehow avoided the wooden spoon for the 4th year in a row. It's like they're allergic to the wooden spoon. I really wanted Canterbury to come last. In a way, I kind of see it's a bit of karma, because I do know a couple of people that go for Brisbane. One of them's my mortal enemy, who I know I'm going a bit off topic here, but they made me life a living hell for the 2 years that I worked at this particular place, and they were a passionate Brisbane fan, and all I can say to that particular person is, I hope you enjoy your wooden spoon and you deserve everything that comes to you. But also I feel sorry for, I've got a really good mate, Johnny Dale. I think he subscribed to my channel, I'm not too sure, but he's a passionate Brisbane fan. He goes to games, and I feel sorry for people like Johnny, because this would be something that he's not used to, seeing his club down the bottom when they're generally a finals team and competing for the Premiership. But anyway, that's me informal review, you can see, of the Brisbane Broncos 2020 season. I hope you enjoyed the review. If you did, click that like button, and if you enjoy the content that I'm making, click that subscribe button. And I'm going to be doing my next season review very shortly, plus the finals week 1 predictions, so stay tuned for those videos. Anyways, everyone, I'll catch you all later. Ta-ra.